I think that it's a basic human right to property. And what property really means is the ability to store economic energy over time in order to sustain yourself. And if we take away a bank of economic energy from humanity, it's the same as sentencing them to slow starvation. I'm a big believer that Bitcoin, is critical to spreading human rights around the world. And what you see right now is that in countries where the currency is collapsing, the banking system doesn't work, then people are turning to Bitcoin and they're using their mobile phones to hold a crypto asset in order to protect themselves. Bitcoin is a crypto asset. It's not a cryptocurrency. It's a tragic misnomer. Because people call it a cryptocurrency, then it lends itself to a shallow criticism that it's not good as a currency because the central banks will ban it, and because the tax treatment is poor, and because the transaction rate is low. But again, those are all red herrings. It's not a currency, nor does it need to be a currency, right? Anybody thinking about it for even a few seconds realizes that if there's a taxable event every time I transfer it to you, it can't be a currency. So
Right.
no, it's not a currency. It's an asset. And if you think of it as an asset, it's very helpful because then you realize it's not competing with the dollar and the euro. It's competing with gold and silver. And once you understand it that way, then you're not so afraid anymore, because you understand the regulatory framework that comes to Bitcoin is the same regulatory framework that comes to gold, silver, and S&P 500 indexes. In order to be a currency, you have to be deemed non-taxable upon transfer. And Bitcoin is not. Bitcoin is deemed property by the IRS, and most countries deem it as property, which makes it an asset, not a currency. So I think that the way the world is evolving, we're going to see 5 billion or more people with mobile phones and mobile wallets. And in that wallet is going to be a selection of currencies and a selection of assets. And the strongest currency is the dollar. And the strongest asset is Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the global monetary network that allows everybody on Earth to store their economic energy over long periods of time. And it also allows everyone to synchronize those mobile wallets in Zimbabwe and Venezuela and Nigeria and India and Argentina and the US and China and the like. And so I see an emerging economy with a digital asset called Bitcoin and a digital currency, likely the dollar, but if not the dollar, perhaps the renminbi, right? And if not the Chinese currency, then perhaps the euro. At the end of the day, the winner is going to be the strongest currency, which will come from the strongest country and the strongest economic network, which will be the US. And the winning asset will be the strongest crypto asset with the greatest security and the greatest acceptance and the most stability, and that will be Bitcoin. If you were to say to me, I can pay you in Bitcoin, it doesn't make a lot of sense because the transactions are slow. But if I had highly appreciated Bitcoin, I would be accelerating a short or long-term capital gains bill in order to pay you. And so the only way that I would pay you in Bitcoin would be I would take $100, I would buy Bitcoin, and then 1 minute later, I would transfer the Bitcoin to you so that the basis in the Bitcoin is equal at the time I acquired it and the time that I transferred it. So I think that this is a vestige from the first decade when there were a lot of retail users of Bitcoin and before they understood the law. But the law has been very clear in the US since 2014. And any institution, right, any high net worth individual, any corporation, any institutional investor understands that you acquire this stuff, you're going to hold it. It doesn't make any sense to pay for anything in Bitcoin for two reasons. The first reason is because it's a taxable event. And you're a fool to accelerate taxes on your own person. The second reason it doesn't make sense is because it's a long duration asset that's deflationary. which means it's likely to go up in value. It's been going up 150 to 200% a year every year for a decade. So why would you pay $1 million in Bitcoin to buy something which is going to depreciate in value when the $1 million in Bitcoin may very well double 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more times, right? So it's a long-term investment asset. A much wiser course of action would be to borrow money against Bitcoin. If you have an appreciating asset, never sell it, finance it. And if the asset's appreciating at 20% a year, and if the interest rate is 5%, then it's pretty obvious what you ought to do is keep the asset, pay 5% interest, because the tax bill on money that's borrowed is zero. So you could live off of your borrowings against your appreciating asset for the rest of your life without ever paying the loan back, and without ever paying any income tax, and without ever paying any capital gains tax.
And I hope my audience is paying attention, because that's exactly, the brilliance of you and what we try to teach here on the channel about, that's why I'm a long-term buy and hold real estate investor, because you're not paying the taxes on the debt. And that's how you can build wealth appropriately and using it that way. So don't be just selling your Bitcoin and buying Ferraris with it. Don't be a knucklehead with it.
If you desperately need a Ferrari, you're better off to borrow the money against the Bitcoin. Like you can be rich with a Ferrari, a yacht, and a jet. You need to have borrowed the money against a tangible asset, which is going up in value as the money supply expands, in order to keep and pay for the Ferrari, the yacht, and the jet. Then the most important thing you can do is construct a portfolio of high quality assets that are scarce, that are going to appreciate in price at a faster rate than the currency supply expands. And so that means Bitcoin, because it's ultimately scarce and fungible. You can transfer it anywhere in the world, and people with money are always going to want it. And after that, perhaps clearly the home that you want to live in the rest of your life, trophy real estate that has tangible value to you, perhaps trophy art, a Mona Lisa, something which is extremely scarce, a Van Gogh painting. If the currency supply increases by a factor of 10 and you have a very scarce piece of art, presumably the price of the artwork is going to go up. The best thing going, of course, would be scarce assets that you can finance. So if you have a home that you love and you can get a 2.5% mortgage for the next 10 to 30 years against it, then it makes sense to maximize the mortgage, hold the property. When the money supply is expanded by a factor of 10, if your home is in a place where no one else wants to live, it won't go up by a factor of 10 because it won't be scarce. But if you've got 3 acres in the Hamptons on the beach or in Palm Beach, right? If you live in a truly desirable community, the price of the home is going to go up. And as the price goes up, your loan's going to be fixed. You'll be able to refinance the home. You've got leveraged equity, if you will, or leveraged property. I think Bitcoin fits into that. Is Bitcoin is appreciating at the fastest rate, faster than the NASDAQ or the S&P or luxury real estate or average real estate around the country, because it's the most scarce, most desirable asset.